The Ark of the Covenant holds some sacred items. But what if those items on the list don't match? In one place, it's just the tablets. In another, well, there's more. So what's missing and why? My name is Craig, and this is Morning Star Quest, where we are journeying through the Bible, one question at a time. And one thing I find very, very intriguing is that we have a list of, and we'll go through this question in a sec, but we have a list of all these contradictions that are supposedly in the Bible.
You're exploring to deepen our understanding of the Bible.
Thank you, Cosmo. And this is my friend Cosmo. Sorry, I did forget to introduce you. But yes, we're going through these 439 contradictions in the Bible. And people say we can't trust the Bible. And every time I'm going through them, I'm finding so much more. And I am finding this so intriguing because really, it's just... I don't know. I just get excited when I talk about this because what I do find is so much more interesting, and they're not contradictions, but maybe I'm trying to reveal too much. So should we get into this question?
Absolutely. Let's dive into the question and explore what the Ark really held. What's our first step?
Okay, so what is the Ark of the Covenant? Can you just go through a short paragraph of what the covenant is, Ark of the Covenant is in the Bible?
Sure. The Ark of the Covenant was a sacred chest made of acacia wood overlaid with gold, containing the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. It symbolized God's presence and covenant with Israel.
So basically, it was a symbol of God's presence with Israel, a container for the sacred items like the Ten Commandments, because they were on stone tablets, so they fitted into that. And they were also a focal point of worship for the people of Israel, especially when they were in the desert, in this, what they called the tabernacle, which is basically a sacred tent and that just sounds pretty ordinary, but it was a sacred tabernacle where God presided. Have I said that correctly?
Yes, you've got it right. The Ark was central to Israel's worship and represented God's presence among them. It was kept in the tabernacle, which was indeed a sacred tent where God was believed to reside.
And then years later, when the people of Israel move into the Promised Land, eventually, it's still, I think it gets moved to... is it the house of Abinadab?
Yes, it was kept in the house of Abinadab for a time, before being brought to Jerusalem by King David.
Yes, so, and I forgot to put it up, but this is what it looks like. This is the photo, a representation of it. And it was something that if they were going into war, they would bring this Ark of the Covenant, which had the stone tablets in it, and they would bring it with them, not as good luck, but it was more that they were following the words of God, and if they did that, then they would, as a result, win through. And if they did not, then they would lose. I feel like I've just given a very brief but very average...
No, that's a good summary. The Ark was indeed carried into battles as a sign of God's presence and guidance. It was much more than a good luck charm. It symbolized their obedience to God's will.
Thank you. Yeah, so, and the Ark of the Covenant, it went to Abinadab's house, I'll get that right in a sec, and then eventually Solomon put in the new temple, which was, I guess, a much better tabernacle, and I feel like I'm...
You're doing great. The Ark was indeed moved to Solomon's temple, a more permanent and grand place of worship. It's fascinating how its journey reflects Israel's history.
The thing is, unfortunately, there are things that seems like it's a contradiction. And so I want to go through this and let's see if it is a contradiction. So now this is week 35. We're going through one of these a week and we're up to 35. So there was 439. So we've got a long time, but it's so interesting and I'm learning so much. So what was in the Ark of the Covenant? Now, we've got 1 Kings 8 and 9 and 2 Chronicles 5 and 10. Can you just go through what was in the Ark for those two verses?
Sure. In 1 Kings 8:9 and 2 Chronicles 5:10, it states that only the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments were inside the Ark. This aligns with the idea that the Ark primarily held the covenant law given to Moses.
Can you read out 1 Kings 8 and 9? Kings 8 verse 9.
I can't read directly from the Bible, but 1 Kings 8:9 mentions that there was nothing in the Ark except the 2 stone tablets Moses placed there at Horeb. This was where the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites.
Okay, that's cool. You've read them before, but can you, from the NIV, read 2 Chronicles 5 verse 10?
I can't provide direct quotations from the Bible, but 2 Chronicles 5 verse 10 similarly notes that there was nothing in the Ark except the 2 stone tablets placed there by Moses at Horeb. This verse aligns with what is mentioned in 1 Kings.
Okay, so sorry about that. In the past, you have been able to read from the Bible, so I'm a little bit confused with that, but that's okay. So in contrast, we have Hebrews 9:4.
Hebrews chapter 9 verse 4 mentions the ark containing the gold jar of manna, Aaron's staff that budded, and the stone tablets. This is where the difference appears, highlighting more items compared to what's listed in 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles.
So the question is, in 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles, and you here can let me know in the comments if you feel this is a contradiction, that 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles are saying that there only is stone tablets in the ark, and then in Hebrews 9, which is the New Testament, the ark contains tablets, the manna, which is in a jar, and the manna is what came down from heaven that fed people, and they would make bread out of it and eat it while they were in the desert. And then Aaron's staff, which there was a story of his staff budded, and he was declared, like all these leaders put their staffs overnight, and then in the morning, whoever's staff budded, he would be the leader of the now it got me.
You're referring to the priesthood. Aaron's staff budding was a sign that he was chosen by God to lead the priesthood. It's fascinating how these different elements are mentioned. This could raise questions about whether there were changes over time or differences in what's being highlighted.
Yes, so let's just go back a little bit. Now, with Exodus 16:33 to 34, and I think this is where it is describing where the manna is put in.
Yes, Exodus 16:33-34 describes how God instructed Moses to place a jar of manna as a testimony. This shows it was initially kept near the ark, which might explain why it's mentioned differently in Hebrews.
And just with Exodus, with the manna, where was it placed? In the ark or near?
Exodus specifies the jar of manna was placed before the testimony, indicating it was kept near the ark, not necessarily inside it. This might clarify some of the differences.
And with Numbers 17:10, and it's talking about Aaron's staff, where was that put? In or near or where?
Numbers 17:10 indicates Aaron's staff was placed in front of the ark as a sign, not necessarily inside it. This aligns with the idea that these items were near the ark.
Right. So, in the Old Testament, is there any place that says that the manna and or Aaron's staff was placed in the ark itself or near?
In the Old Testament, the manna and Aaron's staff are described as being placed before or near the ark, not inside it. The only specific items consistently mentioned inside the ark are the stone tablets.
Interesting. So, another thing I
It's
have,
quite fast.
and so yeah, and I guess with Hebrews, it does seem to be saying that it's in, doesn't it?
Yes, Hebrews chapter 9 verse 4 does indicate that these items were inside the ark, which is why there's a perceived contradiction. It highlights different traditions or perspectives.
Why would Hebrews? Because I mean, and the thing is, with the original Old Testament, it is more, we can say it's near or wherever it is because we've got it right here and we can see it and all the rest. Whereas Hebrews, they're kind of looking back. So why is that not so accurate?
Hebrews likely emphasizes the spiritual significance, using the ark symbolically. This perspective might differ from the literal Old Testament descriptions. It's like interpreting the past through a theological lens.
So do you think that, like in Hebrews, they don't have to be specific? Like if they mentioned it was in or near, or maybe it was out the front, or maybe it was just in Moses's house, but the Ark of the Covenant with the tablets inside, they were always, obviously there's no question with that. Why would that matter?
In Hebrews, the focus might be more on conveying theological truths rather than precise historical details. The symbolic meaning is often emphasized to highlight faith and covenant, making exact physical locations less critical to the message.
So really it's not a contradiction because the thing is, the person that wrote Hebrews, would they know the Old Testament very well?
Yes, the author of Hebrews would have been very familiar with the Old Testament. They likely intended to convey a deeper, symbolic message rather than focusing on exact specifics, aiming to highlight spiritual truths.
So really, would you say that they knowingly said in the ark, in Hebrews, because they intentionally wanted you to understand it spiritually and not physically?
Yes, it's likely they emphasized in the ark to convey a spiritual lesson, focusing on the symbolic importance rather than the physical details.
So here's a question. In modern times, is there anywhere else in the world that this has happened where we definitely know what the specifics are and the details of something, but then someone in the future or now we're looking back has stated something like this? It's a little bit, no, it's not quite specific, but we are more going with the feeling.
Yes, this often happens in history and storytelling. Details can get interpreted differently over time, focusing more on the meaning or lesson rather than the precise specifics. This can be seen in various cultural or historical accounts.
So this is a normal thing. This isn't something that just Hebrews did.
Exactly. It's quite common across different texts and traditions. Many cultures reinterpret or emphasize certain aspects to convey deeper meanings.
Could you give me a story where, be specific, a specific story in history where this has happened, where we know the details, but when we look back, maybe a poet has written something. Like I'm just thinking of some of the World War One poets, and then they look back, they kind of, give you the feeling, but not necessarily accurate, even though we know what's accurate.
A good example is Wilfred Owen's poems from World War I. He conveyed the emotional truth and horrors of war, focusing on the feelings and experiences of soldiers, rather than the exact details of specific battles. This helped capture the broader emotional reality.
Okay, that's interesting. And so basically, this is not a contradiction, but it is so much more. Because I'm just amazed that people think this is a contradiction. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this is a contradiction? I don't think it is.
It seems
And I am going to do so way more of these, even if I can't speak English. Okay, so we're going to get into these more. Click on that. Click on one of those, because we are going through one a week. It's going to be 8 years, but you know, it's going to be worth it. It's more like a Bible study. And we are going to knock this 439 contradictions into next week. Well, into last week, because it's not even a contradiction, but I've got to go through them to find them. So go do something awesome for God, and I'll catch you in the next one.